Let's talk about the questions that shape a life. Have you ever noticed this? No matter how advanced we become, no matter how much information we can access in seconds, human beings keep asking the same questions. Questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is a good life? How do I love without losing myself? Why do I suffer? Is there meaning in pain? Is there a God or a mystery or something that I can trust when I don't know? And maybe the strangest part is this. We often treat these questions as problems that we should have outgrown, as if asking means we're behind. But what if these questions aren't evidence of failure? What if they're evidence that we are awake? So today, I want to explore a little more in depth why the same questions return across time and why that matters right now in modern life. I'm going to hold this conversation with 4 primary voices in the room. Plato, who treated philosophy not as abstract theory, but as a way of life. The Bible, Genesis 1 to 3, a story about creation, image, fall, and the moment humans become self-aware. Viktor Frankl, who watched meaning become the difference between survival and collapse. And Carl Rogers, who reminded us to meet the person behind the problem. So let's begin here. Why do humans keep asking the same questions across time? One answer is simple. Because we keep being human. Different centuries, different technologies. But the inner landscape remains strangely familiar, right? Plato, the Greek philosopher, believed that the unexamined life isn't worth living, not as an insult, but as a warning. Because when we stop examining, when we stop asking, we don't become free. We become programmable. Genesis in the Bible offers another angle. Humans are made in the image of God, which gives us dignity and responsibility. Then comes the famous fall, and suddenly we know that we are naked, exposed, self-conscious, and aware that we are not perfect, that something in us can fracture, can hide, can deceive. And Viktor Frankl, in his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, brings this way of examining life into the most extreme conditions. Being tortured in a Nazi concentration camp, he arrived at the conclusion that when everything is taken away, meaning is what remains. And the existential questioning, the search for meaning, becomes a form of survival. And Carl Rogers brings it into the therapy room and into everyday life. The questions we ask are part of our journey to becoming a person. Because behind every complaint, every symptom, every stuck pattern, there's a person trying to be met with empathy, with honesty, with care, grace, and compassion. So the recurring questions aren't an intellectual hobby. They're a kind of spiritual and psychological metabolism. They create life energy. They keep us alive. They help us to sparkle, as I like to say. And here's why these questions are not a sign of failure, but just the opposite. And here's what I've seen as a physician, as a naturopath, and a mental health coach. They're questioning, diagnosing, seeing, and being human is part of the work. Many of us humans don't suffer only because of what happened to us, what was done to us. We suffer because we feel we shouldn't be a certain way and we shouldn't be asking. Here are a few examples. When people are aware or becoming aware of their honest, sometimes hidden thoughts and of their questions, and I'm no exception here, people often think things like these. Why am I so unhappy? Why do I see others succeed, but I feel left behind? Why is this happening to me? And then we tend to go on to reason with us, right? And it can sound like this. If I just were healthy enough, I'd feel confident. If I just was spiritual enough, I wouldn't doubt. If I just was mature enough, I'd know what I'm doing. Or if this event hadn't happened, I would be happy. Or if I had this thing, this money, this house, this car, this job, I would be happy. Or even worse, if this world would be more just, more kind, more fair, if the weather was better, and if other people would be more helpful, kind, friendly, giving, then I could be happy. Do you know this? And the deeper truth is, a meaningful life isn't a life without question, not with assumption, not just questions. Maybe a good life is a life where questions are allowed to shape you without shaming you. Here's a little side tip for parents. Please allow your kids to ask questions. And if you don't have the answers, it's okay. Isn't it the questions, the curiosity that motivate us to learn, to grow, to mature? It's not about having all the answers. We never do. It's about allowing the questions to direct the search, to shape a life. The questions, who am I, is not a sign you're lost. It's a sign you're alive. You're alive to the fact that identity is formed slowly through life events, choices, relationships, experiences, and the courage to keep asking questions. The question, what is a good life, isn't naive. It's the beginning of ethics. Because if you don't define good, other people or the culture around you will define it for you. Did you notice that in our modern life, questions have become rare? And why does modern life often avoid asking the real, hard questions? I feel that our modern life is incredibly skilled at distracting us from asking. And this is done with great skill and sophistication. We have endless input. We have endless ways to optimize. There are endless ways to stay busy. It's so easy to stay distracted, to avoid life, to avoid changing who you become, to avoid asking questions that are not arguments in disguise, and then to listen to the answers, whether from yourself, the higher spirit, or others. But the ancient questions require something that doesn't scale well: silence, time, honesty, and the willingness to feel what we usually numb, what may feel painful, what we don't want to feel, but need to. Sometimes people avoid the questions, and not because they don't care, but because they are tired. Because it becomes too much to bear, or because asking would threaten the structure they've built to survive. So sometimes we replace "who am I" with branding. We replace "what do I believe" with group identity. We replace "how do I heal" with quick fixes. And then we wonder why anxiety rises, why meaning feels thin, why relationships feel fragile, why things keep deteriorating instead of getting better. It's a foundation that's missing, the blueprint. The core questions of life have moved humans for many thousands of years. So today let me name them one by one in a few human categories, and slowly, because it helps to hear them out. You can also find them written down when you go to the article linked around this video. And of course, these questions are just a starting point. Expand them as you feel your way into them. Use them to enrich your life and grow as a person. Some questions may not apply to the season you are in, and that is okay. And some may come up later, come up never, or come up in a different form, and that is also okay. So here is the first category: questions around identity and self. Questions here sound like these: who am I really? Am I enough just as I am? Who am I becoming? What parts of me am I hiding, avoiding, or abandoning? Can I even trust myself? Next, let's talk about some questions around purpose and meaning. Here we can ask, why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my purpose in this season of life? How do my gifts want to be expressed? What am I here to learn? What would feel meaningful if I weren't afraid? A third category are questions that we can ask around values and the good life. Questions like these: what is a good life? What does success actually mean to me? What am I willing to trade my time and energy for? What kind of elder or ancestor or role model do I want to become? How do I want to be remembered after I am gone? What truly matters when everything else falls away? And then there are many questions around love, belonging, and relationship. Questions like these: am I lovable? Where do I belong? Do I belong? how do I stay connected without losing myself? What does healthy intimacy look like? Why do I feel the need to be loved? Why do I feel the need to be loved by this particular person? And how do I love without fear? Now, a fifth category would be question around choices, around responsibility and freedom. Questions like these. What choices do I want to make in life, and why? What choices do I want to make right now? How do I choose? What process do I follow? How much choice do I really have? Where am I avoiding responsibility? And where am I over-responsible? What does freedom mean to me now? Can humans be free at all? How can I balance my freedom with the freedom of others? What am I ready to choose differently? Then there are questions, difficult questions around suffering, healing, and growth. These can be the questions that haunt us the most, especially if we can't find an answer that feels satisfactory to us. Questions like, why do I suffer? Why do people suffer? Why do people inflict suffering onto other people and some even enjoy it? How can we stop others who seem to enjoy to inflict pain on others? How can we reduce suffering overall? And can we? Should we even try? Is there any meaning in pain? Is there any meaning in suffering? Is it good to relieve pain and suffering? Can relieving or ending pain and suffering be wrong? Now, these are very hard questions, and I don't pretend to have an answer other than for myself, and maybe not even that all the time, because we evolve as beings. So other important questions that come up here are, what am I being asked to let go of? How do I heal without bypassing what I need to learn? And what wants to be integrated rather than fixed? And of course, there's more questions. For example, question around spirit, mystery, and the sacred. And the ones I name are just a few examples of the infinite multitude of questions that can be asked. So I've heard questions that can sound like this. Is there a God? Is there a spiritual source? Is there a greater universal intelligence? Or is it just what I can see and feel that is real? What does reality really mean? Who or what do I trust when I don't know? What does faith mean to me? What do I believe versus what do I know as true? What even is truth? Can we even know what is true? Can we even know anything? Can we even think? Or is there another thinker? Or is brain chemistry making us feel like we think? What if we are really a simulation, like Daniel Gallois stipulated in his famous book, Simulacron 2 in English? I read this as a teenager in German, and I like the German title better, Welt am Draht, which means in English, world on a wire. What if that was the case? What if everything that we think is real is really fake or not true? What if everything we feel is untrue? And what if we could change the way we feel or think? What if others could change the way we feel or think? What if others could force us to change the way we feel or think? Can you see how even language, the way we ask those questions, can change the way we think and feel? And how that may influence the way we express ourselves, the way we behave, the way we act and do, and the way we become, what we have or don't have, our choices, and the outcome of these choices. Where do we even start asking? Now, do animals ask questions? What makes us human versus animals versus plants? Is there a qualitative or just a quantitative difference? Should we even ask any questions? Is it futile? Does it make any sense to ask so many questions? Or is it a waste of important time? Should I ask more questions and think more? Or should I just do as I think and live more? These questions, in unending variations, have probably been asked since the beginning of time. And of course, the answers vary. Because if you need to provide food, shelter, water, and protection to yourself and your loved one, you can't just stop and wait until you are finished wrestling with the difficult questions of life, right? You know, the way and the speed, how you answer these questions for yourself, matter a lot. And how you act as a consequence matters. And we'll talk about more about this and explore it later on. But there are so many more questions because we can ask things like, what does sacred even mean? Is there anything sacred at all? What is sacred to mean? To me, what is faith without certainty? And then we can go on and ask questions like, where do I experience the sacred? How do I live in relationship with mystery? I don't think animals can do that. Maybe they do. I don't know. Then, of course, there are many questions around life, death, and impermanence. For example, question like, what does it mean to live fully? How do I face uncertainty and change? What would I do if I remember daily that I will die? What legacy do I want to leave? What is worth beginning again? These aren't just topics, they are thresholds. And each time you cross one, you become a little bit more honest, a little bit more whole, a little bit more able to live in reality, in now. So here are a few questions, not as homework, but as gentle invitations. And maybe consider this, which is my favorite question, the way I choose to ask and operate my own life. Because besides life, physical integrity itself, what is the one thing that can never be replaced? It's not money, it's not fame, it's not things, not even knowledge, right? It's time. You can never recover the time that you choose to waste, that you choose to let others waste, or you felt forced to let others waste. Don't let others extinguish your sparkle. So for me, there is one question that I always need to answer first. Right now, in this moment, what can I do to sparkle, to feel my best, myself, and then to help those I love and care about most to sparkle too? And if I can, to help also my wider community and even the world at large to improve their sparkling capacity. Now my question for you, which of these questions keep returning in your life right now? Which ones are you avoiding because it feels too big or too tender? What happens in your body when you even touch the question? Tightness, relief, numbness? And what might change if you stopped treating the question as a problem and started treating it as guidance? Carl Rogers would say, you don't heal by attacking yourself to improvement. You heal by meeting yourself with truth and acceptance. Maybe Frankl would add, meaning isn't something you get. It's something you answer through responsibility, through love, and the way you stand in suffering. Because life means suffering, right? And the Bible, Genesis, quietly reminds us that self-awareness can bring shame, but it can also bring the possibility of return. Return to God, return to truth, return to relationship. So today, if you take nothing else from this video, take this. The ancient questions are not outdated. They are durable because you are durable. And when you allow yourself to ask them without rushing to perform an answer, you start living from the inside out. If you'd like a place to continue this kind of conversation in a steady, low-pressure way, you'll find me and others like me inside the 5D Wellness Community Forum. It's free and it's a living dialogue. No urgency, no expectation. Just thoughtful people learning how to live more truthfully over time. And if you prefer to reflect privately, that's equally respected. Until next time, if you like this, subscribe and like this video, comment on it with your insights. And until then, may your questions become companions, not accusations. Be well.